Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, joined today by my good friend and like seven-time guest, Adam Pfeiffer. We've got a Superflex startup mock draft for you today. AP, thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure, Heath. I appreciate you having me on. This is an exciting time. I'm glad we're doing this too, because I'm sitting here waiting for my rookie drafts to start in my Dynasty League. So this will be a fun way to get the draft juices flowing.
And Matt is here in the chat, just here to see where QB4 Josh Allen gets taken this year. That's a shot at me for ranking Allen as QB4 last year.
Might be more of a shot at me too.
I do think that Josh Allen may have finished QB4 last year, but you can see the Buffalo Bills shirt on the other side of the screen. So Josh Allen will not be falling in this draft. This is a full PPR Superflex mock draft. I had the first pick because when I'm hosting the show, I like to have a pick on the corner so I can not pay attention absolutely all the time, Adam. I started with Lamar Jackson. The very next pick at 102 is Josh Allen. And yes, we'll have the draft board up here in just a second. So I guess first question right off the bat, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen in Dynasty?
Yes.
Yes. You would like both of those guys.
I think we talked about this last time I was on, and I have Josh Allen slightly higher, and I can't fight anybody for taking Lamar or Josh. It's kind of that simple. There's really no other way to put it. I mean, the two best quarterbacks in fantasy, probably the two best quarterbacks in the NFL right now with Mahomes, obviously. I don't know. It depends on how because like Lamar is going to rush for more yards, but we've seen this year in and year out, especially now with Henry, like they don't use him at the goal line like the Eagles use Hurts, like the Bills use Josh Allen. And to be fair, even though Josh has been getting more touchdowns, his goal line usage did come down a little bit. So you can use those arguments to kind of split hairs, but the answer of Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen to me is simply yes.
Either one of those feels really great at the start of a draft. Yes, you saw Christian McCaffrey show up on the draft board. No, that's not who Jacob Gibbs took. He got auto-picked because Gibbs did not show up on time for the draft. Next time he's on the show, we're going to give him a hard time about that. I guess while we're waiting for him to get started, and he wants me to now send him a link on X. So Adam, you're going to talk about at what point should we start seeing non-quarterbacks come off the board in a super flex draft like this?
Yeah, obviously goes based off tiers, or at least it should. For me, it's probably right after like the Mahomes, maybe like probably right after Mahomes, I would say. Maybe it would have been you add like somebody like CJ Stroud if he didn't have the down season he had last year. But I would say probably like right around, maybe even after like the fifth quarterback, which is probably Burrow for most people. I would say that's when you can start to see Jamar Chase and Lamb and Jefferson and those guys come off the board. But probably right around the Mahomes, QB6 range, I would say at least.
I have shared the link with Gibbs. He is in the draft room. Hopefully he's the only one who's made this mistake, Adam. So we're thinking it should be Jackson, Allen, Daniels, Mahomes, and Burrow in some order, those five quarterbacks. And then we start talking about Jamar Chase.
Jalen Hurts too, I would say.
So six quarterbacks for you.
I would say probably, yeah.
And Jaden Daniels does go third to Jacob Gibbs, followed by Joe Burrow. So top four quarterbacks off the board. The draft will start getting a little bit more interesting when we start working with position players in there. I have Jamar Chase as my top ranked non-QB in Dynasty. Does that sound right to you, Adam?
Sounds exactly right.
What did you think while we're waiting for some of these picks to come in of the NFL draft, and how soon do you think we see Ashton Genty?
I thought the draft, it was funny because like Genty, we pretty much knew was going to be in, whether it was Chicago, the Raiders, whatever, a pretty good spot. I thought there was a lot of like, at least for like year one, underwhelming spots, but I would say Genty probably within the top 20 picks of a startup.
Yeah, I would say that's right. He's definitely a first rounder for me in one QB. I think I have him seventh or eighth amongst the non-quarterbacks, and we're going to see somewhere around 12 quarterbacks go, I would anticipate, in the first two rounds of this draft. Jamie now on the clock with 20 seconds left. So we start off with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase. So we did not get Mahomes. Then Justin Jefferson. Then Bijan Robinson. Mahomes goes pick 9 to another former guest of the show, the fantasy football mad scientist. But best value of the draft so far?
Yeah, probably. I just, for me, like, just given what Hurts has done lately, and we still have suddenly question marks about the Chiefs offense, I felt like Hurts was the pick I should have made, but I did not anticipate Mahomes going, 9th overall. I thought he'd be, maybe Chase and then Mahomes, but yeah, I think that's pretty good value. And if, like, I picked Mahomes to win MVP this time last year, like, I just still think he has at least one more of those, like, 4,840 touchdown seasons left. I struggle to believe he won't do that again.
We've seen it happen we saw it happen with both Brady and Rodgers. When you are one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for 20 years, there's going to be a 2-year stretch where you don't score a lot of fantasy points.
Yeah.
He's not to the age now where we actually think he might be declining. I thought it was interesting. Both Bijan and Gibbs go in the first 2 rounds. How would you rank Genty with those other 2 running backs right now? Bijan Robinson, Ashton Genty, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, he's definitely behind them. I think it's pretty obvious that the top 2 running backs in Dynasty are Bijan and Gibbs, but if you wanted to put Barkley, who just goes off the board right after, ahead of him, I get it, but that's more of like a 2-year window. Genty, 21 years old. He is in a spot where Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll want to run the football, and there is a path, at least in year 1, that he leads the NFL in touches right out of the gate. So I think right there is where he should be if you wanted to go as early as it was right after those 2. I don't think that's too early. If you wanted to put Barkley ahead of him, I think that's reasonable too. But this is where he should go, at least among the running backs.
Let's take a look at the full round 1. So we have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Patrick Mahomes, and then Jahmyr Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb, and Malik Neighbors. I've been a little bit conflicted on Lamb after the draft. One side of the take is the Cowboys didn't draft any other pass catchers, so he's going to just have 190, 200 targets this season. The other side I see, though, is like, is this going to work, or is this just going to be a bad offense in Dallas?
I don't think it'll be bad. I think we've seen kind of iterations of this similar offense where it's throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb 180 times, and they're not going to be a top 5 to 7 unit probably, but when you have a healthy Dak, and I think they have enough around him, I think they could have added more, but I think CeeDee Lamb, like, I didn't have it this time last year. I had Chase as my number 1 player, but if you told me CeeDee Lamb finished as the wide receiver 1 this season, I wouldn't be really surprised at all. Just honestly, based off volume, like, I think if you're projecting, I know you do projections, like, if you're projecting targets, like, I think it's very, reasonable to have him leading the NFL in targets this year.
We got a wow, Adam terrible, and I don't think that's for you, but it might be. I kind of assumed it was for Azer, who took Malik Neighbors and Ashton Genty at the 1-2 turn. How do you feel about, in a Superflex startup, picking at 12th and not getting a quarterback in your first
pick? It's funny because I feel like every time, and I was thinking about this before the draft, every time I'm in one of these drafts with you, I feel like I'm where Azer was picking, and it's like it's tough because, especially in a Superflex, you have to either say, okay, I have to get quarterbacks here and risk the run on the opposite end of the draft order, or you say, look, I have to get my guys here because there's a chance they don't make it back. So I am not jealous. I'm actually happy to be picking where I'm at, but look, there's always a couple teams that just kind of say, you know what, I'll see what happens at the end with quarterbacks, and I can get a couple guys. And this is a spot where you kind of have to do it. So if, with Genty, I think it's right around where he probably will go in a lot of drafts. But it's also tough too, because especially if you're doing it tier based with quarterbacks, if there's a massive tier drop, then maybe you don't feel as inclined to rush and grab a quarterback.
And you are on the clock. I apologize for making you talk.
No, you're fine. I am really torn between 2 players here because it's a similar question, right? I have Jalen Hurts. I want this other quarterback that I'm extremely high on, but I'm also struggling to pass on Puka. But receiver's loaded, so I'm going to take my quarterback here. I'm going to be I think he's still on the board. He should be, yeah. Look, I am really high on this player, and I don't even know if this is. I don't think it's a reach, especially in Superflex, but I'm expecting his value to be maybe even closer to the first round, back of the first round. I'm taking Drake May.
Wow. So I actually had a quarterback not at the top of my board because I do think Puka Nacua is a great value here.
Yeah, it was between those two, but I just thought there's really good receivers left still, and I should
actually
be able to get
thought
one.
it was a different second-year quarterback that you were going to take there. The guy that got the new offensive coordinator and the new tight end and the new wide receiver. I won't say his name because there's a couple picks until I pick, but I've got a new nominee for my favorite pick of the draft through 2 rounds, and that is Brock Bowers.
Yeah, he was the pick for me. That's why I was debating between May and Puka. I was hoping Bowers made it back to me.
I really, really think Bowers, even in this format, should be a first-round pick, and I think it's possible that he should be a first-round pick in redraft, and he may just have one of those Travis Kelce seasons where he outscores everybody else by 3 fantasy points per game.
Like we're talking about Bowers as like the wide receiver 4 and the obvious tight end 1 type seasons.
Yes. Like he's in the consideration for a first-round pick, even if he was a wide receiver. Justin Herbert goes off the board. So another quarterback. And then there's Caleb Williams, Matt Donnelly. I'm not a big fan of yours right now. So Justin Herbert.
I'm actually glad I took May too, because it feels like it would have gone like those 3 quarterbacks, and then I wouldn't have gotten one of those guys. So, and I just thought receiver, I can get somebody on the turn here.
Yeah, and I think since I already have a quarterback, I'm going to go running back, wide receiver here. There's a couple of quarterbacks I like, but I don't know that they're real difference makers. And I've got my QB1. And so I am going to take the guy who's actually my RB4. Never mind. Somebody already took Achane. So I guess I'll take.
Yeah, Achane went early second, it looked like.
Yeah, right in that Barkley. We had a little run of running backs. I'll take Nico Collins here to end round 2. And then this is not going to be a popular pick in the chat because for some reason it seems like everybody else is lower on him than I am, but I still believe in this San Francisco system. I think he's about ready to get $50 million for 4 or 5 years, be a $200 million man. I will take Brock Purdy to start round 3. And that's a good time for us to now recap round 2, especially for those of you listening who don't have the draft board in front of you. So Azer started round 2 off with Ashton Genty, followed by Saquon Barkley, CJ Stroud, Devon Achane, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Brock Bowers, Drake May, Puka Nacua, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, and Nico Collins. So it's Genty, Barkley, Stroud, Achane, St. Brown, Thomas, Bowers, May, and Nacua. Herbert, Williams, and Nico. And I'll just be honest with you. I'm not just picking on Gibbs because he was late to the draft. I'm pretty concerned about Justin Herbert ever really matching that upside he showed us early in his career, especially as long as Harbaugh's there. I think he's just a high-end QB2, and I'm not sure I want to take that guy that early.
Yeah, I mean, I took Drake May over him, and to be honest with you, it wouldn't even, like, I actually wasn't even aware fully if he was on the board still, but it wouldn't have mattered. I just think it depends on what part of the season you look at the Chargers offense, because to start the season, when they had J.K. Dobbins healthy and running well, Herbert wasn't throwing a lot, and then, you know, Dobbins is out for a little bit, and they uptick the passing rate, and Herbert had some weeks, but the red zone offense is really bad. He wasn't throwing the ball a lot in the red zone. I just think his ceiling is kind of capped in this offense. Doesn't mean he's not a good player still. I would just, like, I look at Drake May. The reason I like Drake May, I tweeted about it yesterday, but week 6 through, I think it was 17, he didn't play week 18, I believe. Yeah, he didn't play week 18. So week 6 through 17, he was the QB 15 in fantasy. He was top 5 in both scramble rate and rushing yards per game among quarterbacks. And at FTN Fantasy, we have the stats hub. There's a stat called highlight throws, which are throws that require, great accuracy, throw power, all those intangibles.
Right.
He was tied with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes during that stretch in highlight throws. So you see the skill set. Josh McDaniels already talked about they want to use him in the run game even more with more design stuff. He only had 4 design runs during that stretch total. Then you give him everything they added in the draft. You give him Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, Trayvon Henderson, who's not only elite in pass protection, but in the passing game as well. I think Drake May, and again, I took him over Caleb Williams too. maybe I'm maybe I shouldn't be as high on a fellow AFC East quarterback, but I think Drake May is set for a top 12 season, and I think he could be drafted at the end of the first round in Superflex startups this time next year.
Gibbs really just wants us to talk about his team the entire draft, it seems like,
Travis
because
Hunter.
with pick 27, he takes Travis Hunter. I'm pretty high on Travis Hunter. So like I've got him 33rd.
I just made a trade in my Dynasty League to get up to the 103 to secure Travis Hunter, which I already have the 101. So this is why I'm excited for my rookie draft to start, so I can just add Genty and whether it's Hampton or Hunter to my team.
You think there's a realistic chance that Hunter's just like a consensus top 6 wide receiver in Dynasty at some point in the near future?
I do.
The talent's there, right?
Like there's shades of like CeeDee Lamb after the catch, and then there's shades of like I don't even know in terms of at the catch point. Like it's insane.
So we've really seen a big run early in round 3 on wide receivers, and or on quarterbacks, and we just finished up round 3. So let's talk about that, because I think this is an interesting inflection point to where you have like elite difference makers available at other positions, and you have a lot of maybe older QB2s or younger guys that haven't really shown it yet. But I took Purdy to start the round, then Drake London, Travis Hunter, Derrick Henry, Ladd McConkey, A.J. Brown, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Kyron Williams, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff for Azer to end round 3. So Purdy, London, Hunter, Henry, McConkey, Brown, Nix, Lawrence, Williams, Love, Mayfield, Goff. Do you like the position players better in round 3, or do you think that everybody's right to just keep hammering quarterback?
I do like the position players, but at the end of the day, like you have to go get quarterbacks, as we see JJ McCarthy go, who I think I just keep forgetting about for some reason. There's a chance that could be a really good value where he went. But I do like the position players for the most part. But it's also easier for me to say that because I already have 2 quarterbacks, I guess.
Well, yeah, you're definitely like, and that's kind of where most people ended up, is they've already got quarterbacks. We saw Dave and Azer pass on quarterback in round 1 and round 2. And here now to start round 4, Azer takes Cam Ward. A few picks later, you just said it, Dave takes JJ McCarthy. There is an opportunity cost to having those elite position players in round 1 or round 2. And the opportunity cost is you might need to start Cam Ward or JJ McCarthy next year. Let's take our first break, and then we'll recap round 4.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
We are back, and we're still in round 4. I mentioned Azer taking Cam Ward. I want to kind of highlight whenever we have the rookies go off the board here, Adam. Where are you on Ward specifically in Superflex? I think it's easier to just kind of wait and see with him in a 1 quarterback league, but you're going to have to make a decision this year in Superflex.
Yeah, it's tough because I like parts of that offense. Like, I do think in some capacity with Callahan still there, they will try to get him at least a little bit going with the run game. For me, though, it comes down to, like, he's obviously a better prospect than Will Levis, and Levis just couldn't stop turning the ball over. He does have some of those instances where he kind of doesn't take what's there and just kind of forces things, so that's going to be something he has to work on. But can we get somebody other than Calvin Ridley? Because I was looking at the depth chart, and it's like you have 32-year-old Tyler Lockett, then you have Treylon Burks, and they added a couple rookies as well. I just don't know what the ceiling is in this offense. I think he's going to be fine in Superflex, obviously, as a QB2, but I don't know. I just don't see any quarterbacks in this draft class really. Maybe Jackson Dart at some point just because he runs a lot and he has a true bona fide number 1 receiver. But I just think the ceiling's kind of capped right now with the way that offense looks.
I did want to briefly touch on one of the picks and just kind of ask you your opinion, because we did see Derrick Henry go in round 3. We had some comments in the chat. What in the world is Derrick Henry doing in round 3 of a dynasty draft? People would have said that same thing 2 years ago, though, right? Yeah. So how do you feel about Derrick Henry there?
I mean, it's definitely early for me, but I feel like at some point we should just stop talking about Derrick Henry because he's just going to keep running for 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. But yeah, I mean, him ahead of Amari and Hampton, James Cook, Bucky Irving is definitely surprising. That range that just went to, like, I wanted so many players, I struggled to decide, but I ended up going Garrett Wilson just because 180 targets sounds good to me.
I think I have to make an update in my running back rankings at the dynasty position as forced by this 4-5 turn. Breece Hall was a pretty easy pick for me at pick 48. Love getting him at the 4-5 turn. There's still a little bit of concern, but I also still think there's top 5 upside there. I had 2 running backs right at the top of my rankings, and they were Chase Brown and Trevion Henderson. And I do have Brown slightly higher right now. And I had this realization, as happens when we're drafting, and that's kind of what helps us form our rankings this time of year, is I'd rather have Trevion Henderson, especially in full PPR. So I'm going to take him. Where do you land on Chase Brown versus Trevion Henderson?
Well, Henderson was in my queue, so
good.
That answers that question. Hopefully Chase Brown makes it back to me. But yeah, I mean, Chase Brown was somebody I wrote about like 2 weeks ago saying just expect the letdown when they draft a running back with decent draft capital, and they didn't. They drafted Taj Brooks like in the 7th round. I don't think Chase Brown's getting the 24 touches per game he got once Zach Moss went down, but clearly they feel pretty comfortable with Chase Brown getting 16 to 18 touches, and he's probably going to catch 4 or 5 passes a game. So I do think, like, if we were doing there goes Chase Brown, I can't be happy. If you're looking at, I do think Chase Brown is an opportunity to sell high because most people probably weren't trading for him leading up to the draft because they were expected to draft a running back. But now I think you can say, look, they didn't draft anybody of consequence. Chase Brown's going to get 20 touches per game. I do think at least trying to sell him high makes some sense.
100% agree with that. This is an excellent time. I hope that you weren't selling him before the draft because you were scared they were going to take a quarterback, because then you didn't get the full value, but you can definitely get the full value right now. We're a little bit behind on our recaps here, so let's take a look at round 4 and see what stands out. Cam Ward went first, followed by Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, 3 straight Cardinals, J.J. McCarthy, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Bucky Irving, Garrett Wilson, James Cook, Omarion Hampton, Jonathan Taylor, and Breece Hall to round out round 4. So it's Ward, Murray, Harrison, McBride, McCarthy, and Smith-Njigba, Irving, Wilson, Cook, Hampton, Taylor, and Hall. A lot of running backs in that round. We got another rookie here in Omarion Hampton. He went just a couple picks before I took Trevion Henderson. Not many people do. So this is Heath being an outlier, and you can choose to follow whichever direction you'd like to. But I actually, in full PPR, prefer Henderson to Hampton. What do you think this split looks like in year 1 between Hampton and Najee?
I think it starts with, like, trying to find a good comparison. I think it's going to start, like, similarly close to what Pittsburgh was last year. But then I think by, like, week 6, week 7, it's just pretty obvious that Hampton has way more juice, and I think it could be closer to like 70-30 in the second half. But also, it might not matter because the Chargers are going to run the ball enough to where they're both going to get enough work to be good. I do think it starts at least in a like 51-49 type split, but then midway through the season, we see this with rookies all the time, especially running backs. In the second half, they just start to take over. So I think by like week 8, week 9, we see Hampton get like 65 to 70% of the work, is my guess.
Yeah, my problem is, and I've talked about this a little bit already, but we've been wanting Najee Harris to come off the field more for like 4 years. And then the Chargers made the choice to go add him. He seems like the type of player that coaches want on the field.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to miss games. We know that. And he's not going to, for the most part, like, he's not going to give you like the 30-yard runs or the explosive plays, but he's also not going to, like with Kenneth Walker, like you at least tolerate the -1, -2, 0-yard runs because all of a sudden he's down the field for 50 yards. Harris isn't going to do the 50 yards, but he's not going to do the -1, -2s. He's going to give you 3 yards, and then enough to do enough and not make mistakes, which coaches do value quite a bit. I just think at some point they're going to see Omarion Hampton and say, this guy needs to be on the field more.
I may have a new favorite pick as we see Dak Prescott, pick 57. Now, we talked about this earlier with the lack of weapons in Dallas, but we've seen Dak produce top 6 seasons basically with one wide receiver. Seems like a lot of guys went before Dak that are probably not going to score as many fantasy points the next 3 years as Dak.
Yeah, I know this is Dynasty. I just did my redraft rankings yesterday. I have Dak as my QB7. I'm probably going to be higher on him than most. I just every time we've seen him healthy for the last couple of years, he's been towards the top of the NFL. I think he could be towards the top of the NFL in passing attempts as well. That's an awesome pick with Dak there. I just think Dak has always kind of been super undervalued in Dynasty to start with anyway.
And we finished up round 5. I took Trevion Henderson to start the round, followed by Chase Brown and Teteroa McMillan. He does not like Ted, apparently, Adam tells me. Michael
T-Mac.
Penix.
He likes T-Mac.
T-Mac, okay. Rashee Rice, Bryce Young, Tua, Xavier Worthy, Dak Prescott, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, and R.J. Harvey. So Henderson, Brown, McMillan, Penix, Rice, Young, Tua, Worthy. My screen moved. Prescott, Dak Prescott, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, and R.J. Harvey. Harvey, yet another rookie taken in the first 5 rounds of this Superflex startup draft. I feel like I've got him at pick 201 in Superflex rookie drafts, Adam. And that seems to be too low to actually draft Harvey if I want to. The rookie drafts I've been in so far, he goes in round 1 pretty much every time, no matter the format. And that's because he was a round 2 pick. Sean Payton, I think most people would say overpaid on him based on the draft boards, but people, despite what's happened with the running backs the last 2 years in Denver, still have this Sean Payton running back fetish is probably the wrong word. But I feel like we had this same thing with Andy Reid for a while. Like he came to Kansas City and Kareem Hunt had that great rookie year. And we had this extensive history of Andy Reid's running backs. If you can get an Andy Reid running back, and now the last few years, that's not really been true. What direction do you think that's going with Peyton? Does Harvey kind of rekindle our love for Sean Payton running backs, or is he just going to be a mess from now on?
I think it lies somewhere in between. I was looking at some of the data at FTN, specifically on Javonte Williams. I'm going to make my selection real fast. Okay, Walker went. I'm going to take George Kittle here. I know he's old, but he just got the contract. He is – I think he's live to be right up there with Bowers and McBride, so I'm going to take Kittle. But with Harvey, like I was looking at some of the data with Javonte Williams, and last year he was 4.1 targets per game, 6 among running backs, 13% target share, 6 among running backs, 67% of the third downs, and 62% of the 2-minute drill snaps. That was 8th, and Bo Nix had the 11th highest check down rate in the NFL. So this is tough for me because I was really heavy on the Jaleel McLaughlin sleeper train this time last season, but Harvey's obviously a way more talented prospect. I think McLaughlin was like undrafted,
right?
2nd round draft capital. They were real like there. It wasn't just them too. Like I think Jacksonville really wanted Harvey, so the NFL clearly valued RJ Harvey pretty highly. And he doesn't have to get like he can lose some short yardage work to Audric Estime and still be awesome in this offense. Like Javonte Williams was super inefficient, but he got super enticing fantasy volume as a pass catcher. And Harvey's probably going to be the favorite to get the early down work as well. So yeah, I think. I'm trying not to get too excited because we've also seen Sean Payton with some like incredibly talented pass catching running backs over the years. Harvey's not, Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush, those types of players, but the draft capital, how excited he was to get him. I think they have really exciting plans for him. And again, they still haven't added anybody at receiver of really consequence either. They added Ingram at tight end, but it's really Sutton, whatever they get from Marvin Mims and, Devon Vele, but there's an opportunity for Harvey to catch 50 plus passes.
So I come here to the end of round 6 with 2 quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy, 2 running backs, Breece Hall and Trevion Henderson, and Nico Collins is my only wide receiver. Thankfully, other than a couple of upside quarterbacks, Jordan Addison is my highest ranked player, so he was a pretty easy pick. Then I've come to a conundrum, and I'm gonna have you kind of analyze your thoughts on this selection because I've got Rome Odunze, Zay Flowers, Matthew Golden, Jamison Williams are my top wide receivers available. They're all ahead of any running backs or tight ends. I'm going to stick with my rankings this time and not make a change in the rankings based on the pick. I'm going to take Rome Odunze. But I have gotten over, like, since the draft, a little bit more concerned about what the Luther Burden pick means for either Odunze or DJ Moore. How would you rank those three in Dynasty, and how do you think that it settles out next year?
Yeah, I haven't really moved off Rome Odunze with the Loveland and Burden selections. I just think he is, and maybe it's because I was so high on him as a prospect to start with. So, but like he had like 60% of his air yards were uncatchable last year. He was used mostly down the field. I think Ben Johnson is going to get him more creative touches. Caleb Williams and the Bears last year were 21st in dropbacks that use motion. That's going to change. I do think he's going to. Like, who's to say Luther Burden, despite him being immensely talented, at least in year one, isn't used like in a Khalif Raymond type role?
Right.
And then DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are getting all the targets. I just think he's still an awesome player. Caleb Johnson just went. I am not happy.
Not happy with the Caleb Johnson pick while Adam tries to figure out what he wants to do.
Also,
here.
it is very difficult drafting and doing the podcast because when I took Kittle, I assumed Sam Laporta was gone. So that's a terrible pick by me. Sam Laporta was still on the board. So,
well, I think you just switched to win now mode, and you think Kittle's gonna be better than Loveland this year. You'll be good to go. So round 6, Azer started it off with Quinshon Judkins. Loved that pick. Then we had Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy. Loved that pick. Josh Jacobs, Jackson Dart. I want to come back to that one from Jamie. Ken Walker, George Kittle. Mike didn't want you to feel bad about taking an old guy in Kittle, so he took Mike Evans. Colston Loveland, Sam Laporta, and then I finished the round out with Jordan Addison. So a couple of rookies here, Judkins and Dart. I'm pretty excited, and Loveland, so 3 of them. I'm pretty excited about Judkins. I think he's going to be the lead back in Cleveland probably for the next 4 or 5 years. I am less excited about Dart. I think like the appeal of quarterbacks in Superflex is one of 2 things. You've got a huge ceiling, and so we don't worry as much about your floor, and that's kind of where we are with a Richardson or a Fields. Or maybe you've got a great floor because you're Cam Ward and you're drafted first overall, so we know you get to start the next 3 seasons, but we don't know about the ceiling. With Dart, I'm concerned about the ceiling and the floor.
I just don't. It's tough because like that front office and coaching staff, they need to win or at least show some promise or they're probably getting fired.
Right.
And with that mindset, does that push them to saying, okay, let's just take the decent floor we could get with Russell Wilson, like at least being in games? Or by week 4, the fans are going to be chanting for Jackson Dart, and could that lead to more volatility? We know Jameis is going to give you volatility and, some really splash weeks. They're in a tough spot, at least for what they want to do from a front office and an organizational standpoint. But in terms of Jackson Dart, the prospect, like I do think if he starts relatively early, not that it's saying much, but he could easily be the best rookie quarterback in unless Jalen Milroe gets any time because what he could do with his legs. But Jackson Dart, he's kind of got a lot of that, high upside type of play where he throws the ball on the field, he'll run a lot, sometimes doesn't go out of bounds, but it's tough with that Giants team from where they are right now because these guys need to save their jobs, and to do that, they need to win games. But also, you traded up in the first round to take Jackson Dart. They're going to want him to play sooner rather than later, especially if this team is 3-4 games under 500.
I know at least a few of you guys that are in the draft are also listening to us talk about the draft right now, and I know that because you snipe us when we talk about players. But I just want to say thank you, because this has been a remarkably smooth start to this draft. We're 33 minutes into the podcast. We are now 7 rounds through the draft. Let me read this list of names, then we'll take our second break, and then we'll break it down. Round 7, I started with Rome Odunze. Chris Olave went right after him, then Caleb Johnson. You heard Adam lament that pick. Travis Kelce, Chuba Hubbard, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Warren, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers, Alvin Kamara, and Jamison Williams. That's Odunze, Olave, and Johnson. Kelce, Hubbard, and Moore. McLaurin, Warren, and Adams. Flowers, Kamara, and Williams. Tyler Warren goes pick 80, probably a round and a half after Colston Loveland. Do you have a strong take on Loveland versus Warren? And how much do you see Warren's landing spot as a negative?
I have Loveland over Warren. It's tough when you have like a player like Warren who is the better blocking prospect, but also like, would you be surprised if they gave him a couple carries here and there because he did that in college? But I just think the landing spot's better. We definitely feel better about the Bears offense. Draft capital was close, but I think it was live that Loveland would have went earlier than Warren, but I think most people, if you ask 10 people, I would say probably 6 had Loveland or Warren as the better prospect. So I have Loveland ahead. I do think Warren, just in terms of like what he can do with creative touches, if they give him those, could be really good. But yeah, I mean, you feel better about the trajectory of the Bears passing attack for sure.
And we had Azer in the chat. Thank you, Adam. I was really appreciate that. We are coming up to Adam's pick in round 8. While he is on the clock, I'm going to take a look at his team. I have really no idea who's on your team because that's how
I barely do too.
You barely do also. So you've got Jalen Hurts, just one running back in Chuba Hubbard. We've got a couple of wide receivers, 4 of them: Garrett Wilson, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Waddle, Rashee Rice. You got to like that. You just took Waddle. Kittle is your tight end. Drake May is your QB2. How do you feel about the first 8 rounds of this draft?
Yeah, I don't love having only Chuba at running back, but from the tiers and everything, like I kept getting sniped on a lot of the running backs I wanted, so I didn't feel like, almost kind of saying, you know what, whatever, I'll just settle and take, a 31-year-old running back. I just didn't think the value was there. And I'm not even the highest on Jalen Waddle. I think a lot of his usage is really concerning with how all the scheme stuff goes to Jonnu Smith, Devon Achane, and of course Tyreek Hill. But towards the end of the 8th round in the startup, I kind of couldn't really pass that up.
I think there's a lot of hidden upside there with Waddle as well. Obviously, there's all the off the field.
Dude, I've been writing about this for what feels like years now, Heath. All the scheme stuff. Like if you look at the motion, like if we have a lot of stats where you can look at the targets a receiver has when they were used in motion at the snap. It's Tyreek Hill with like 30 of them, and then Waddle has like 5 a year where he actually gets a target where he's the guy in motion right at the snap. They don't ever use him in that role, and he's relying on the post routes and deep stuff, which when they do it, Tua to Jalen Waddle on post routes is one of the better connections in the NFL. But we know last year they were checking down everything because the offensive line was bad, and that's why you saw Achane and Jonnu Smith get so much work. So frustrating. I actually was surprised he was there, though, so I thought it was decent value.
I just double tapped rookie wide receivers at the 8-9 turn with Matthew Golden and Luther Burden. It takes away a little bit of my anxiety about what if Luther Burden just makes Rome Odunze go away. Do you have a strong preference between those two? I see them go anywhere from pick 7 or 8 in rookie drafts to sometimes falling outside of the top 14 or 15.
I prefer Burden just because I think he's the much better player. Landing spot, I don't know. What landing spot do you prefer? Because you like both offenses. You like the path probably for targets more for Trey Harris. But, man, Burden, like, I still can't get what would have been his 2023 season. I can't get that out of my head. Like, I just think if situations were better last year, he would have been a first-round pick.
Yeah, I thought at first, oh, no, he fell out of the first round. Oh, no, they've got DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. And then you have that light bulb that goes on that says, dummy, you think this guy is supremely talented and has ways to win that are as good as anybody in the NFL when you're using him the right way. And he just got drafted by the offensive coordinator that we trust more than anyone to use him the right way. Why would you not want to draft that guy? I think I forgot to take the second break. So let's go ahead and take that second break, and then we'll break down round 8.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season, now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
We are looking at round 8, which Adam Azer kicked off with Ricky Pearsall, followed by DK Metcalf, Joe Mixon, Cortland Sutton, Emeka Egbuka, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Waddle, David Montgomery, Cam Skattebo, George Pickens, and Matthew Golden. That's Pearsall, Metcalf, Mixon, Sutton, Egbuka, Pollard, Swift, Waddle, Montgomery, Skattebo, Pickens, and Golden. So we've got a couple of rookies that go in this round. Dave takes Egbuka, 89th overall. I thought he was one of the most pro-ready wide receivers in this class. And then he goes to the absolute worst place to make an immediate impact with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin already on the team. And then Scattaboo goes 94th. I take Golden 96th. How do you handle a player like Ibuka if you believe in him, but he may not have the opportunity in year one?
Yeah, that was one of the more, I don't want to say perplexing. I thought it was a solid draft pick, but like frustrating moves for fantasy, because I was expecting Ibuka to go somewhere he could be the wide receiver 2 at least very easily. There's obviously some factors there, like maybe this is Mike Evans last season. Chris Godwin, how healthy will he be right out of the gate? I think it's going to be really good, but like if you're a dynasty team that's not contending, you don't worry about taking a Emeka Egbuka in the middle of the first round, 7th, 8th pick of your rookie draft. But it is a little head scratching. I thought we could have got him maybe to like a team, I don't know, trying to think of teams that were in that range. But I just thought there could have been better landing spots. But I don't think it should deter you from taking him. You just got to be patient.
In round 9, we see both Anthony Richardson and Justin Fields. These quarterbacks, probably more than any others, I prefer relative to their peers in 1 QB versus Superflex, because 1 QB, I talk about this all the time, all that matters is upside. Superflex, you need 2 starters every week. So that's why they fall to the QB3 range. Do you have hope that either one of these guys is going to reach their true potential, or are they just placeholders for their current teams until they can find a real quarterback, and we'll take the fantasy points as long as we can get it?
It's probably for Richardson, like this is the year, right? Like if it doesn't happen this year, the Colts are taking a quarterback relatively early next year. Fields, I think, can play well enough to where like the Jets can be good enough to where maybe they aren't in a position to take one of those quarterbacks in the draft. I definitely prefer Fields. We know what he does when he can play close to a full season. He's going to be right up there, QB 10-ish, I think. And I think what they're going to be able to do with him, obviously running the football, but like Wilson, Mason Taylor, I think it's enough. And I think there's just way less of a chance he gets benched midseason.
I was just looking at the, and you're getting ready to pick, so maybe I should wait just a second to say this, but you've already taken one, so it doesn't matter. I was really thinking, man, the tight ends have really kind of disappeared from the draft board. And then I scroll down, and my top ranked tight end left is Dalton Kincaid. If I would have told you a year ago that Dalton Kincaid's going to be available in the 10th round of a dynasty startup draft, even if it was Superflex, I think you would have said that I was insane. You are our favorite Bills analyst that comes on to FFT Dynasty, and that's not just because I make you look at the Chiefs stuff for an hour. But how concerned are you that it's just over for Kincaid, or are you still hopeful?
I am much closer to believing it's over than I ever thought I would. And he apparently was playing with injury last year, but and this is like this time last year, I was all in on Dalton Kincaid. But they spread the ball way more than anybody thought. They have this everybody eats approach on offense. And that means, Kincaid, some weeks will have 7 targets, some weeks will have 2. And I just think from watching the Bills as close as I do, there's a trust factor that Josh Allen has with receivers. And I would rank Kincaid towards the bottom. I think obviously Shakir's number 1. I think Dawson Knox is up there ahead of Kincaid. Ty Johnson's up. The running backs are all up there ahead of Kincaid, I think. And we'll see what happens to Josh Palmer, and then obviously Keon Coleman in year 2. I'm pretty close to being out. I just think he might just be a dude, and like that's fine for an offense that has the weapons and that they do, but not when they traded up in the first round to take him.
Yeah,
I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
It's definitely been a strange journey. Because the target per route stuff looks pretty good. It's just he's not on the field all the time.
It was so weird too, because remember the week 1 game against the Cardinals where he almost had a goose egg? They had bracket coverage on him almost every play. Like he was getting doubled consistently. I was like, oh, maybe teams are realizing Kincaid's going to be really good, and then it just didn't matter. Like I was such a weird season from him.
Every draft that I host, there comes a point where I kind of lose the script in terms of who's taken who's available, what my team needs. That happened here. I actually had to reset my own timer because I couldn't make a pick, and I'm going to double tap the tight end position now. I'm actually going to take Kincaid for the future, and I'm going to take David Njoku for the now. So I feel like I've got a starting tight end for at least 1 year, maybe Harold Fannon's job next year. Njoku is a free agent, but I'll take Kincaid as well and hope for some development there. Even with some concern about Kincaid, pick up 11.1, the 121st pick in a startup draft is a pretty good place for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I could easily be wrong, and he could just finally put everything together. But even if you you can take players at value, even though if you don't I took Tyron Tracy pretty late. I don't love Tyron Tracy, but I thought for a team that needs running back help, I think there's a chance Cam Scatterboot takes his job. But what if it isn't that way? You can not like a player but still like the value.
And Matt Donnelly takes Kyle Pitts right after Njoku. You more hope for Pitts or Kincaid?
I'm done with Kyle Pitts. The two tight ends I wrote most about last offseason about finally breaking out were Pitts and Kincaid. But Pitts, it's just I'm done. I'm done.
I think Jacob Gibbs is currently trolling me by only taking wide receivers in this mock now. Not wide receivers, rookies in this mock now. That's okay. Let's read through the round 9 results. I started round 9 with Luther Burden, followed by Trey Harris. Bashal Tootin went next. That was 3 rookies in a row. Then Jacoby Myers, James Conner, Anthony Richardson, Jack Besh, Chris Godwin, Travis Etienne, Justin Fields, Mark Andrews, and Geno Smith. So Tootin and Etienne go in the same round. Tootin goes before Etienne. I'm still pretty much of the belief that Etienne is going to be the most valuable back on Jacksonville's team, both this year and for dynasty purposes. Are you more excited about Tootin than I am?
A little bit. I'm not of the belief that he's going to just because Tank Bigsby's still there, and he was in terms of avoided tackle rate, stuff like that, yards after contact per attempt, he was right up towards the top of the NFL. He was much better than Etienne, which isn't saying a ton. But I think Tootin, it's not just passing Etienne. I think he still has to pass Bigsby because his disastrous rookie year is behind him. He was much better last year. I'm a little bit higher on him than you, but maybe it's also I'm a little bit lower on Etienne than you at the same time.
Right.
But I don't think Tootin's coming in and moving Etienne to a bench role or anything like that. But there's been trade rumors with Etienne for a year and a half now, so who knows?
Right. We also have round 10 results in. Adam Azer started that round with Juwan Jennings, and he, remember earlier in the draft, took Ricky Pearsall. I prefer Jennings this year, but I do like getting both those guys because there's a lot of uncertainty about that situation. I think one of them would be really good. Aaron Jones goes second, TJ Hawkinson, Cooper Kupp, Khalil Shakir, Isaiah Pacheco, Sam Darnold, Tyrone Tracy, Tank Bigsby, Jalen Milroe to Jacob Gibbs, Stephon Diggs, and David Njoku. You talked about it, man. Milroe's upside, if he gets a chance to start, I mean, he's just right there in that Fields-Richardson conversation, isn't he? Except for the fact that we think those guys might get a chance to start this year.
Right. And we saw flashes of it with Clint Kubiak last year with the Saints. That offense is going to be fantasy friendly in terms of pace, motion, stuff like that. So, that's one of the landing spots where it's obviously Darnold's there, but if he gets any sort of playing time, he could be really, really fun for fantasy.
We are finishing up round 11 now. We're just about done with this podcast. We will finish the draft, full 18 rounds, actually. People are going to be mad at me when they figure that out. Then when we do, I'll publish an article over on CBS Sports like I always do, giving you the full results and some of my thoughts on the draft. But let's take a look at our teams. I saw somebody in the chat hates my team, so that's fitting. Let's see why. I have Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy at quarterback. I have Breece Hall and Trevion Henderson and currently no RB3. I have Nico Collins, Jordan Addison, Roma Dunze, Matthew Golden, and Luther Burden at wide receiver. David Njoku and Dalton Kincaid are my tight ends. I've got to find some running backs somewhere, right, Adam?
Yeah, I'm not too far behind you. I don't love my running backs, but again, the way the draft fell, it's just I felt like the receivers were better. Also, I know there's a lot of uncertainty with him with the injury. There's been trade rumors, but I got Ayuk in the 11th round.
Yeah, I think he is a really hard player to value because he's past the age.
Yeah. I'm taking on risk. I have Rashee Rice and Brandon Ayuk right now, so But I
Right.
have the pieces to fill in if we're playing this league out where I can put Waddle in. I have the receivers, I think. So
I think a lot of people may look at a super flex draft and think I'm either building to win now
right.
or I'm building to win in the future. And it's hard to figure out which one of those Ayuk fits in.
Yep. That's a
And
great
so
point. He is so hard to pinpoint of like what timeline he fits in.
I'm right now expecting both Pearsall and Jennings to be the 1 and 2 in terms of total points scored this year for the 49ers. Do you think there's a chance we get to the second half of the season and Ayuk's the number 1 in that offense this year?
I absolutely do, because 2 years ago, this guy was somebody that like we were vaulting up as like one of the 15 best receivers in the league. And then remember how bad he was last year before he got hurt? Like he was dropping passes. It was so weird. Maybe, just maybe, missing training camp plays a factor.
We are also about 5 picks away from me taking somebody else who was bad last year for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel is still on the board. We are at pick 140 in this draft. Adam's on the clock, so I shouldn't have been talking about this already. Deebo is someone I think can really help Jaden Daniels by working that underneath part of the field and then maybe doing something with the ball after he catches it. And I actually think that this situation might work out for him just as well. We've talked about how in San Francisco, he's had to battle Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and all these guys for targets. They have Terry McLaurin there in Washington, but I don't see anybody else that can prevent Deebo from being the number 2 target in this offense. If he's right, is he not a huge value here?
Yeah, like I don't think they really wanted to give Zach Ertz the volume they did. It's just they weren't ready to play Benson it, and they didn't have anybody else that was consistent. Deebo, it depends on if you like. People think he's washed. He had obviously the stuff with the pneumonia that impacted him, but last year this was a very screen heavy offense. Jaden Daniels was 6th in the NFL in screen attempts per game at 4.1. Again, down 2024 from Deebo, but in 2023 off screen passes he was 6th in the NFL in explosive play rate at 30.8%. He was 1st in yards after the catch per reception at 16 on screen passes, and he was 5th in EPA per target. If we get that in this offense from Deebo, that could be really, really fun, and I would imagine they probably give him not the same as San Francisco did, but a couple carries per game most likely.
I'm going to take a couple of backup running backs here at the 12-13 turn. It's the time for that, right? A couple of guys who don't rank quite as high in redraft. Zach Charbonnet because Ken Walker's in front of him. Trey Benson because James Conner's in front of him. But I feel like either one of these guys are just an injury away or maybe a trade away from being a top 15 running back in fantasy football.
Yeah, Benson is super interesting because everybody's talking about this rookie class at running back. And then last year's obviously, other than Bucky and Tracy, was disappointment. But nothing's really changed. Like James Conner is still, missing a couple games this season, and he's obviously on the older side. Trey Benson, like he was losing work to like DeMarcado and stuff last season. Michael Carter got some work, but like nothing's really changed. Like you could probably trade for Trey Benson relatively cheap right now. And I think there's definitely upside there.
Before we wrap this podcast up, let's take one more look over at Adam's team as he is on the clock in round 13. He has Jalen Hurts, Drake May, and like me, no QB3. He has James Conner and Chuba Hubbard looking like a win now roster with Tyrone Tracy and Jadon Blue on the bench at running back. His wide receivers are Garrett Wilson, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Waddle, Rashee Rice. Absolutely love that group with Brandon Ayuk on the bench. At tight end, it's looking like George Kittle. Oh, you had Tyjae Spears that you just took there as well. You feel pretty good about this team?
I feel like most of the time I do these drafts live on the pod. I'm fine with my team. There's obviously spots where I just fall asleep at the wheel, but I do think I got a lot of decent value. I do think if I were to go back, I would have taken Laporta over Kittle. I honestly thought Laporta was gone. But that happens. I still think Kittle's going to be really good. I liked some of the value I got with Garrett Wilson. Rashee Rice went pretty late too. I know there's some uncertainty here, but I think I have enough behind it to kind of make up for it. And I'm just so high on Drake May that I like my quarterback room quite a bit.
Adam, thank you so much for being here. Just tell everybody once again, I know they know because they've heard you a bunch of times, but tell everybody where they can find your work and what you've got coming up.
Yeah, over at ftnfantasy.com. Doing a lot of right now I'm doing a lot of work with the NBA stuff for the playoffs, which is really fun, and of course still doing a ton of we had our NFL draft coverage where we were doing live video reactions. We were doing live blogs. It was really fun. And now we're doing a bunch of draft recap stuff, with some of the veterans that are seeing their value rise and fall from the draft. Just a ton of amazing content at ftnfantasy.com. And I encourage you to check out the advanced stats up. I tweet about it all the time. I mention it all the time. It's something you can just absolutely get lost in with awesome data. You want to find a player, what their yards per route run is when they're in motion. You can find that. You want to find a quarterback's, advanced stats on post routes. You can find that. So ftnfantasy.com, check out the advanced stats hub, all the content as well. Rankings being posted as well. I've just finished my my first run of rankings, and it's really fun to see which players you come out pretty high on that you didn't expect, or vice versa.
Thank you so much for being here today, Adam. Thank you to Debo for running the draft board and making everything work. Thank you to everybody who was active in the chat. It was an active chat today. We will talk to you next Tuesday.